Up until now, we saw how Fate was treated like a trash because of useless skill gluttony, and only Roxy ever cared for him. And one day he discovered his ability could eat the soul of anyone he kills, and with it Fate could grow powerful, so Fate decided to dedicate his life only to protect Roxy. And Roxy was a kind noble girl, so other Holy Knight conspired and sent Roxy to Babylon Town, the town closest to Monster's lair. So Fate also followed Roxy secretly and discovered his ability is one of the deadly sin, despite that Fate arrives in Babylon Town and ran into Roxy, but he was wearing a concealing mask. But there Fate found another holder of deadly sin, Eris. She was planning to kill Roxy. And Fate on the other hand started to have a hard time controlling his powers to devour souls to feed gluttony skill, even so Fate somehow gets back in control to protect Roxy. She was being targeted by many monsters and Fate knew Eris must be trying to kill Roxy by manipulating monsters. So Fate was keeping an eye on Roxy, but now, Fate was in a really sticky situation because Roxy challenged Fate to a fight. Fate was going around bringing many monsters to earn money for a living. And he got a lot of money, and money obviously draws attention, so Fate beats all the thug up that came to him. But the ruckus drew attention of Roxy. Fate didn't know self-defense was a crime. So Maria showed that he had beat up 56 warriors plus property damage, all of this in less than a month. Fate tries to blame the other party, but violence was violence. Roxy was ready to beat Fate and force him to join the army so thugs wouldn't bother him. But Fate doesn't want to be restricted by law and order. And Roxy knew Fate would say this and told him to fight her, but Fate didn't draw out her sword. Fate was sure he could beat Roxy with just the scabbard, but Fate underestimated her power. Roxy got some power and ability, and Fate got attacks on his mask. She told Corpse to take this seriously or she would reveal his identity. Fate barely dodged her attack. So this time he used the holy skill. Roxy and others were amazed that Corpse could use a skill which only Holy Knights could use, so Fate just made up it was because of his scabbard. Roxy thought Corpse was a former Holy Knight, but Corpse denied and attacked Roxy with half of his power. It was clear Roxy could barely block the attacks. But Fate saw Roxy had a locket with the same jewel he gifted to her back in the past, but that daydreaming caused his victory to turn into defeat. But even Roxy noticed Fate was holding back in their fight. Fate tries to play dumb, but Roxy tells him that he was using Aaron's swordsmanship skills. Roxy learned his technique when she was coming to Gallia. There Aaron told Roxy about a warrior who learned his skills. But Aaron refused to reveal Fate's identity because Aaron had noticed this and told Roxy that the warrior who learned his technique had difficulty controlling his powers. So Roxy thought of assisting Fate with his problem, but Fate scorned off her and left. Roxy was still carrying for others despite being in the hands of death. But then Mugan stopped Fate to have a little chat about the Chimera, so Fate shares his information that all the monsters they came across were controlled. Mugan already had a rough idea since he saw the monster been a monster core because his family had been studying Gallia tech for generations. And now even his daughter is continuing the family legacy to research lost Gallia tech. Mugan couldn't stop praising his little daughter, so Fate thought to let his daughter look into Chimera. But the more undoting father took it wrong and thought Fate was interested in his daughter and runs after Fate to punish him. Mugan's daughter Lane was a researcher. She heard from her assistant that Raphael was researching the Philosopher's Stone he got. He found it before his younger brother died. So Lane goes through her book and it was written that Philosopher's Stone can cure any wounds and make the user powerful, but it can also control the user. Raphael was playing with something dangerous just to kill his brother's killer, and the killer was remembering the warning mind gave him to control his skill or it could take control over his mind. Then suddenly the warning has been alarmed because a stampede was approaching, and Northern gave this news to Roxy and she moves out with her army to stop monsters from approaching the town. Fate was observing everything from behind, but he sensed a monster was approaching the army from their back, so Fate swifts greed mode to kill the monster. He used half-starvation mode to enhance its attack. Since greed always takes his stats to make his attack powerful, that attack brought out the monster slime, and it had the same mark on it. Fate still jumps in for a fight, and saw the slime got some scary stats, and suddenly slime rained the rain of acid and greed warned him that acid could melt him in an instant. So best course of action to fight the slime is with long-range attacks. Fate gave greed his 10% stats for his attack, but the slime separated his body to survive the attack and runs away from Fate. But he left his minions to block Fate from coming behind, yet Fate beat up the minions and got to its moving location. He once again tried with everything he could to attack the slime and its core. But there was something else that got into Slime before him, and because of it the Slime survived. The one controlling monsters was right above, and Fate felt he's a deadly sin owner. He used the magic bullet in those slimes, and those slime attacks Fate at the same time, but he dissolved them with the same corrosion magic. Fate thought person in front was Eris and attacked her head-on, but she repels it easily. Fate had reached the human limits and Eris was beyond this level called Domain E. So all of Fate's attack won't work against a person of Domain E, which irritates him even more, but when the killer talked, it was of a man's voice. Fate realized as he got on his knees blocking the attack, that he has to reach Domain E, and that anger levels him up to Domain E just for Roxy. Fate slashed the guy's mask and saw he was Northern, one of Holy Knights under Roxy's command. He was a traitor and called out that same dragon to kill Roxy. He was even blocking Fate from reaching out to Roxy to save her. But still Fate made it in the nick of time to block the attacks of that dragon to save Roxy. But in that struggle Fate lost his mask and finally Roxy found out Fate was always by her side to protect her. But then the episode ends. It's a custom for every freaking TV show to end right when the revelation and long-awaited reunion comes, and the same thing happened in this anime. Just when Roxy found out Fate was the corpse who protected her on every monster extermination, episode ends. Well anyways, if you're also pissed and want to see the reunion in the next episode, then tell me down in the comments section.